Okay, good morning, everyone. We'll call the June 1st, 2010 meeting of the Jackson City Council to order, and we'll ask Councilman Charles Rom to lead us in our invocation and pledge. Everyone, please rise.
Dear Father, we just come to you this morning just acknowledging that what an awesome God you are. We're just so blessed by the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us as individuals and as a city. Dear Father, we are just, again, thankful for the many veterans that have served and have given the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom that we experience, that we can come here today and voice our opinions and views. Dear Lord, it's just my prayer that you just put your hand on each city employee and the decisions that they make on a daily basis as they would benefit our community as a whole. Dear Lord, we just lift your name up on high. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah.
Okay, Anita, I think we can show all council present with the exception of Councilman Hayes, who I think is not only out of town but out of the country, I think. We have approval of the minutes of the May 4th, 2010 meeting. Council received a copy of those minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, we'll just accept those minutes as provided. Also, the May 13th, 2010 call budget meeting. You have a copy of those minutes, and I'll ask if there are any corrections or additions to those minutes. If not, there's no objection. We'll accept those as presented. We have one proclamation this morning, and I'll ask Shackelford Wood to come on up and bring some special folks with him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's time again for the 2010 Stone Cup, which is the city and county golf championship. We're going to be holding it on the 17th and 18th of July this year, with the first round being played at Jackson National, second round being played at Falcon Ridge. The top 8 qualifiers then will go to the Jackson Country Club on the 24th and the 25th of July to engage in match play for the Albert Stone Cup. I want to introduce, first of all, today Mr. Butch Cashin, who's here standing in place of his good friend, the recently departed Mr. Albert Stone, for whom the cup is named. And we have Miss Betty Tigner and Mr. Jimmy Riggins, who are the son and daughter of our honoree this year. Other people to mention, Mayor, of course, we have the Talkington family here. The Talkingtons were good friends with Mr. Riggins, Kyle Forbright, who's the head golf professional of the Jackson Country Club, and Ernest Lawrence, who's on our committee. Last year, David Sawyers won that Stone Cup for the second year in a row, defeating for the second year in a row Marshall Talkington. David's getting older and Marshall's getting better, so Marshall wants a rematch this year, so we're looking forward to a good tournament. Our honoree this year, each year we honor one person, and our honoree this year is Mr. Jim Riggins.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being here this morning. We do have a proclamation which I'd like to read and make part of this meeting and present to you all. It's a proclamation whereas James Jim Edward Riggins was a distinguished citizen and resident of Jackson, Madison County, Tennessee, has been an important and integral part of its golfing community. And whereas Jim was born on 9 May 1925 in Charlotte, North Carolina, like many great golfers before him, such as Francis Ormette and Ben Hogan, he grew up across the street from a golf course and began his career in golf as a caddy at the age of 8 years old. Not only was golf a game that he grew to love, during the Depression, it was a way for him to earn extra money to help his family. In between caddying, he learned how to play the game in the early morning and late night in the shadows with the discarded clubs and balls. As a result, he became an artisan of the game of golf. And whereas at the age of 16, Jim and his family faced additional adversity when Jim's dad passed away. 2 years later, with the nation at war, Jim, like many of the young men of that time, joined the United States Army, where he served as an infantryman in combat in Italy and in the European campaigns. And whereas upon his discharge, Jim returned to the United States and chose a career in golf. Jim joined the Professional Golf Association in 1947. During that time, Jim met the love of his life, his wife Faye, and they married in 1954. Their first child, Betty, was born. And whereas he worked his various jobs in golf until 1956, when he joined the PGA Tour, playing with Faye and Betty in tow. From 1956 through 1958, he played the tour with the greats of the game, to include Ben Hogan, Byron Nelson, Dr. Kerry Middlecoff, Raymond Floyd, Jimmy Bolt, and Julius Boris. He played in the 1958 U.S. Open at Southern Hills in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And whereas Jim left the tour in 1958 because of an injury, from 1959 to 1964, Jim worked various club jobs in the Carolinas until he moved to Jackson to become the head golf professional at the Jackson Country Club. His son Jimmy was born in 1965, and whereas in 1963, Jim played in the PGA Championship at the Dallas Athletic Club, and in 1966 he played in the PGA Championship at Firestone and was paired with Jack Nicklaus for the first 2 rounds. And whereas in 1967 he left the Jackson Country Club and developed Jim Riggins Golf Land at VFW along Highway 45. That is now known as Highland Green. While there, he introduced many people to the great games of golf through his 9-hole golf course, driving range, and lessons. One of his prime pupils was his son Jimmy, who learned the game of golf and life from his dad while working and picking up balls at the course from an early age. And whereas during this time, Jim continued to play competitive golf, participating in 1974 PGA Club Professional Championship at Pinehurst, South Carolina. And in 1980, U.S. Senior Open played at Wingfoot, New Jersey. Jim remained active in the PGA and the Tennessee section, playing in over 16 match events for his state. At his death, he had 16 verified holes in one. Jim loved his beloved wife, Faye, in 1981. He sold golf land to Les Jecko in 1987. He is survived by his daughter, Betty Tigner, who owns and operates Natural Herbs, and his son Jimmy, who works as a sales representative for AstraZeneca. He is also survived by 4 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. Whereas he has many close friends and golfing partners, to include Tom Talkington, Dr. Royce Reese, Les Jacko, Dr. Billy Walker, Dee Ames, Albert Stone, Butch Cashin, and his physician, Dan Honeycutt. He passed away in 1997 at the age of 82 after celebrating his 50th anniversary as a PGA member. Whereas in recognition of his life and dedication to the furtherance of the great game of golf here in Jackson, Madison County, Tennessee, and as a part of the 2010 Stone Cup, the official golf championship for Jackson, Madison County, Tennessee, let it be known that the honoree for the 2010 Stone Cup is Jim Riggins. Now, therefore, we, Jerry Gist, Mayor of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, and Jimmy Harris, Mayor of Madison County, Tennessee, do hereby jointly proclaim the 2010 Albert A. Stone Jr. Cup as the official golf championship of Jackson, Madison County, Tennessee, this first day of June 2010, and urge all citizens to participate in the annual golf championship and to express appreciation to the family of Jim Riggins for his contributions as stated herein. Now, witness whereof, we're hereunto set our hands and cause the seals of the City of Jackson, Tennessee, and the County of Madison, Tennessee, this first day of June 2010. Earl, it's an honor for me to present this to you and all the family members for Jim Riggins. Okay, this is the time for invitation for public comment, and I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments in opposition to or approve of any item under new business. If you would, just indicate that now, and I'll ask you to come on up. Seeing none, I think we have a special presentation by Chief Kendrick and some of the staff from the Jackson Police Department discussing CompStat Plus. Chief, you want to bring staff on up?
Morning, Mayor and Council. We appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys today. We'll try to be as brief as possible. We know that you have a lot of things on the agenda. We're very excited about an initiative that's ongoing with our agency that we feel like is going to bring about a level of empowerment to not only our department but our community as we address those concerns that are part of our responsibility as a law enforcement agency. And we felt like in order to facilitate doing this, we had to look at our mission statement and understand the primary responsibility for the members of the Jackson Police Department is the quality of life for our citizens and our community. In the levity I've had to go out in the community and to go out and meet with some of the civic organizations and so forth, I asked two questions. I said, is there a fear of crime in Jackson, Tennessee? And do you feel like crime is worse now in Jackson, Tennessee than it was in 2006? And without hesitation, I can tell you that on both of those, I get an affirmative or I get a yes. There is a fear of crime and people feel like crime is worse. So it's imperative that we do something about this. Even though the statistics show since 1999 that crime has been decreasing, it's still in our hearts and in our minds. And when it's in our hearts and in our minds, it affects a way of life. It diminishes our quality of life in some regard. So as we begin to think about crime, we thought, well, let's look at 2009. Let's look at a year in review as far as crime in our community is concerned. And I mentioned this to you guys previously in one of our meetings. I showed you this bar graph as far as it relates to the actual calls for service. And you can see there that there are 98,977 calls for service by the members of the Jackson Police Department in 2009. You see a number of other categories there, and you look at the bars, and I ask some of the people, I say, what do you see when you see the bars? Well, we just see some varying degrees, but we're not really in varying degrees as far as the height of the bars, meaning that there's either more going on or less going on, but we really don't feel like we're mining the data out and seeing exactly what our year in review is telling us. You can go look at the year in review as far as crime, as it geographically is on a map across our community, and you can see it's quite concerning there, but that yet there again, that's the year in review. And you're seeing that it's so overlaid by many crimes ongoing in certain areas that it's really kind of hard to make any heads or tails about it. We can actually start going into our year in review and start looking at that 98,977 calls and alphabetically look at how those calls break down. We can literally begin to go into our year in review. We can start looking at the hours of day and the day of week that we're seeing crime ongoing in our community. And I think it's imperative that we do this because it has to do with the management of our police personnel and meeting the needs of our community. We can literally see from this, and I know it's not clear, and I apologize for that in the PDF. I couldn't get it to darken up as I want to, but this is actually the crash data for the city of Jackson for a year. We begin to see the time frames there that's telling us when we really need to have the adequacy police service out there to meet the needs as far as the crashes that are impacting our citizens and everything that we can do to reduce those further. So I guess you might say, looking at that brings to us CompStat Plus, and at this time I'm going to ask two members of our analyst division, Ms. Knowlton and Sergeant Hallenbach, to give you a little bit more of an overview of what CompStat Plus entails.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning.
Good morning.
CompStat Plus is a concept that's been used in other parts of the country to actually look at crime data and look at what's going on a here and now basis instead of waiting till the end of the year to see what's going on or to try to troubleshoot, after things become a problem. It gives us some foresight into what's actually happening so we can respond immediately. The CompStat Plus model, the CompStat model is actually, it's broken down basically into four parts. It's accurate and timely data. We want to pull our data as quickly and get accurate data, make sure we're looking at the right stuff as quickly and as timely as possible so we can look at that data to go ahead and come up with number two, which is effective tactics. We can pull the data, we can look at the data, and then we can plan and try to meet the needs of what's going on at that time, so we can go ahead for number 3, which is rapid deployment of personnel and resources. We want to get on it quick. We don't want to wait till we've already had major problems going on. We want, as soon as we identify a problem, we want to get on it. And another thing that CompStat forces us to do is to go ahead and follow up and assess what we're doing. If we do have a problem and we're addressing that problem and we're doing something and we're not seeing an improvement in that problem and we're not seeing any results from that problem, then we need to regroup and see what it is we're doing and follow up again and regroup and go ahead and attack that problem in a different way. So it gives us the tools to go ahead and follow those concepts. This pretty much is the workflow of how it goes for us during the week. Monday morning at 2 o'clock, it's automatically pulling the data from our records management system into an automated form that Jennifer has prepared that we present to all the data to the command staff so they can go ahead and start formulating plans. We pull that data, we go ahead, it's kind of raw at that point. We'll go through and fix it and make sure that the data is accurate and that all the report information has been put in correctly. And we send a report to the Criminal Investigations Division. The investigators then are able to review that and see what cases and be able to get information together for our pre-CompStat meeting, which we have on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning pre-CompStat meeting, we all get together with the investigators and we go over specifics of the cases, you know, any evidence that was found, any suspects have been developed, and that kind of stuff. So communication is going throughout the investigators division with different crimes that are being worked and trends and that type of thing are being looked at. So we meet with them on Tuesday morning, I'm sorry, and then it comes back to the analysis unit. We go ahead and we compile all the information with the suspects and the new data information, add to our synopsis report to get to the command staff, and we get that to the command staff ideally Tuesday at 1:30. That report is then sent to the district commanders, to the captains who are responsible then for looking at the data, identifying the problems, and finding out, coming up with a plan of what we're supposed to do or how we're going to go ahead and address this issue. So they get that at Tuesday at 1:30, and then Wednesday morning at 9:30, we actually have our CompStat meeting. Our CompStat meeting is where everybody comes together. It's open to all members of the police department, where everybody comes together and we discuss these crimes. We talk about the different issues that are going on within the communities. We look at the numbers so we can go ahead and measure the results of anything we have done, and we just generally share information and stuff on individuals. CompStat is the pure numbers. The plus part comes in where we're also utilizing intelligence information. We're utilizing different aspects of that. We're using different aspects of traffic violations and stuff like that. So we've actually added more to the initial CompStat model by overlaying more problem-oriented police and stuff, and some of the intelligence-led policing, laying over with the CompStat. And this is a map that we prepare every week for our CompStat meeting. That is 1 week of CompStat crimes. In CompStat, we only look at certain crimes, and the concept of that is if you look at these certain crimes, that if we measure these crimes, all of crime actually goes down. The same individuals are committing the burglaries that are the domestic abusers, that are the same ones that are shoplifting, that are going to people's shit, that kind of thing. The same individuals are doing that. So the studies and everything that's shown by utilizing CompStat is that if you concentrate on these crimes where it's manageable for a police department to actually look and be aggressive towards these crimes, that everything else falls in place. And this is 1 week's worth of data that we have pulled, that we lay out for a weekly map that the commanders get and that we look at and try to see geographically where these crimes are happening. Okay, Jennifer?
Okay. Through this slide, you'll see we're looking at these 7 crimes specifically: commercial burglary, residential burglary, vehicle theft, and then our violent crimes of homicide, rape, and robbery. As Leslie said, those are the ones we feel each of the individuals that are committing these crimes are also committing the other crimes. They have other things involved, such as drugs and everything. This is through the end of May 15th, beginning of the year. You'll note that overall crime is down. But in our areas of our property crimes for this week, you'll see that those areas are up: residential burglary, and vehicle theft. This slide reflects such as that too.
ask a question?
Change the
Yes, sir.
resolution.
2009 versus 2010, these are identical timeframes? In other
Yes,
words,
sir.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. You'll note that the citywide, where you can compare our north and south, which our north and south, if you'll refer to the map over here to the side, predominantly the north area is above Parkway. You have just a small area that does flow down below Parkway. Those are what we're gonna look at for time reference today, to be able to show you the information that we're providing. We are providing it for the north and the south district on each week, but for time purposes today, we'll just address the north. You'll see year-to-date and the weekly in that graph, it does appear to be similar. Okay. The next is the map for the week. And just through this map here, we can identify that we have a vehicle theft problem in that one area. This is similar to our other slide that was for citywide. This is just for the North District so that we can see the numbers in comparison to each other for the same time period from 2009 to 2010. The next one. Okay, and this one, it gives a 4-week comparison to see how things might be changing, if there's a pattern that is developed over the 4-week period. We also, in this one, addressed aggravated assaults and reckless endangerment because that is that's one of the crimes that affects us in a great deal throughout the time period. The next slide. This is our north comparison. The year-to-date and the weekly, you'll note that the numbers are very similar. It stays pretty consistent.
Okay, this is the synopsis report that we prepare every week for the district commanders. And basically it lays out each of these crimes that we're looking at as they occurred during that week period. And we go through it, and I'm gonna go through some of it like we actually do it. We'll go North Area 1, the first one there, incident number 10-8848 is an aggravated assault. It was domestic. It occurred at the 000 block of Central Avenue. Mr. Hassel assaulted his girlfriend by hitting her in the face, back, and arms. He also attempted to strangle and suffocate her with a pillow, and patrol made an arrest of that. That gentleman was arrested. Next case we had was a rape that happened at the 700 block of Galaxy Drive. Suspect came to the victim's car, opened the door, dragged her out of the building, and raped her. He punched her repeatedly in the face and threatened to kill her. There was an arrest made on that. So what we'll do when we have an arrest made, we'll go ahead and we'll put that slide up. So all the police officers and everybody knows, we all know that who was arrested, maybe a suspect in a different case, and maybe a series of rapes going on. And they'll know that this individual is somebody to look at, that everybody else knows this person was picked up. We'll do some stuff on their local history. We'll try to find out what's going on with them at the day of the CompStat meeting, if they're out on bond, if they're still being held on bond. But that's the kind of information that we like to pass along to meetings. What we'll do too, like you'll see on this page here, it's highlighted in beige, and that's a vehicle burglary that occurred on Elmwood Drive. And the front driver's side window was broken out. There was a purse with a wallet, a Tennessee driver's license, 2 debit cards, insurance card. The purse was lying on the front driver's seat floorboard. So they went into that car, went into the woman's purse that was on the floorboard, and took those items. While doing the analysis, we looked at that and we said that appears to be related to incident number 10-9153, which is over here, which was another vehicle burglary and a car theft that occurred at Beverly Hills Drive. And it lays out the information, the stuff that was taken from that, and just so we could tie those crimes together, that we found things in common. If you go down to the vehicle thefts, you had a 600 block of Old Humboldt Road. There was another vehicle theft at Cabin Creek Drive, which are both highlighted in light blue. And those appear to be related because when they went to make the report of the one report, the other stolen car was found left at that location. So they stole the car, they left it at that location, and they left it running with the keys in it and the windshield wipers going, and they stole another car, and then that other car was recovered in Memphis. So we're actually tracking these guys, and we're finding out more about where they are, and we're able to find those vehicles, get those vehicles, process them for evidence and that kind of stuff, and try to put these cases together based on some of this information. Same thing with the other two that are highlighted in pink. We got Rachel Drive. We had a red four-wheel that was taken on a trailer. They also attempted to steal a motorcycle there that day. But this is a sample of what we do and what we look at and what we're pulling every week and that we're discussing and during the meetings.
I have a question, if I may. Good morning. Are these the actual reports that will be generated from the CompStat system? The reports that we're looking at, are these the actual reports that you all will see?
These are actual reports that are pulled out of our records management system,
Okay.
yes, sir.
And I believe the young lady mentioned earlier that you can or cannot look at other crimes.
We can.
You can?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If the need arises, that we see that it's a predominant pattern, then we'll address those crimes. It's just that we realize that these crimes affect more people. These crimes also normally have the same players in them as the other crimes do.
Okay, and my next question is, that this is reviewed on the district commander level?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and can you explain to me how then it's disseminated to the patrol level?
Well, the meetings are open to the patrol officers. They can come to the meetings, and several have been to the meetings. Also, we have a system set up now in roll call where we have an actual television monitor that all this data weekly, and also any other information as far as officer safety issues, training things that come up, anything that they need to know. We have this thing running in roll call 30 minutes prior to the start of roll call. And we throw all the CompStat data up there for them. So that's up there for them, where they can go ahead and they can look at the actual CompStat reports. The officers also have access to some other technology and stuff we have with Command Central and crime reports, where they can go in and look at the crime in their districts and areas outside of this. But they are given, these reports are ran on those monitors for the officers.
And are they required to attend those meetings? Are they required to look at those reports?
It's during their roll call meeting, so they're
That's when
in attendance, yes.
that
sir.
information is disseminated
Yes,
to
sir.
them?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you did say that you can look at other areas, any area around the city, correct?
Yeah, we can analyze and look at any data and do any type of analysis, but the actual CompStat model is more where it's focused on these crimes.
Okay. And are there other reports that can be generated from the information that you get?
I guess I'm not sure what you're asking.
What kind of report?
I guess my question is, are we locked into just these reports, or is there another level that you can take a snapshot of kind of what's going on?
What we're hoping to do is really look at some of the offenders and start going back into the history of that offender and finding out even going back into their school. I mean, what we're seeing of a crime is indicative of something that just happened. That wasn't where the problem lies. The problem lies where they broke off of normality. Either the fact that there wasn't any one support factor there in the home. This is going to be a holistic approach for all of our community, every stakeholder in this community that has to do with the quality of life for our citizens, to be apprised of where there are issues. It may not be a law enforcement issue, but we really feel that we can dig back into this data, that we can acutely go back, start finding the pulse of a lot of these problems, rather than waiting until that problem has manifested itself and a life is lost or even worse.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Okay. Additionally, in our CompStat model, we are presenting crash data. And this is a basic overview so far, what she had compiled for the month of May through the end of the 15th. It gives your main intersections where you have either the most accidents, tells the type of intersection. Next slide. And this also shows you the time of day where the accidents are happening for that time period, 5/1 through 5/18.
So I know, guys, it's been a quick through process as far as CompStat is concerned, but I think there's a level of empowerment that's coming about through CompStat. I think for too long, maybe the agency, law enforcement, has been too centralized, and we're trying to develop an autonomous type relationship with our officers out there as far as empowering them with this knowledge so they can actually facilitate doing some things where, as the old proverbial saying goes, the rubber meets the road. So when and Sergeant Hallenbach alluded to it a while ago, we can look at the Jackson Police Department 2009 annual report, but I think one of the things that's so sad about this report is it's already happened. We want to be more proactive than we want to be reactive. That's the reason we're wanting to do this on a weekly basis. I go back and bring back to you the graph a while ago that we started with. And looking at that graph and looking at the other things that we broke out, I tell the guys there, you know, it was there all along, we just hadn't been looking at it. And when I say it was there all along, we hadn't been looking at it, I'll bring your attention specifically to that first page we looked at. It had the alarms on there. You'll see false alarms and you'll see valid alarms. There were 8,332 alarm calls that were answered by the Jackson Police Department in 2009. 0.008% of those alarms were actually valid alarms. The rest of them were false alarms. If you start looking at 8,332 alarm calls by the Jackson Police Department, not counting those by the Jackson Fire Department. And you look at the fact, and I asked Mr. Todd at the garage if he would help me with this. We looked at an hourly rate that it costs to operate a police car, and it's between $5.12 an hour and $3.73 an hour. So basically, if I looked at a mid-range, that's $4.42 an hour, figuring 8,332 false alarms at $15 an hour, maybe the pay for a basic police officer to respond to that. We're talking about $553,661.40 in a numeric that is costing the city of Jackson for us to respond to false alarms. So as we begin to look at data, data begins to tell us things that through the Security and Alarm Coalition of America, there are ways and means that we can reduce this. Johnson City's reduced theirs 46%. I have a figure here from a sister city, which is Union City, that reduced theirs from 1,143 to 509 in just a few years' time by having a model alarm policy. And I'm just saying that by looking at data, this is some of the things that data can be, begin to tell us. It can make us more responsible to the needs of our community as far as management is concerned, not only from the numerics, but as far as our personnel is concerned. We're excited about CompStat and what it's bringing to us as far as the empowerment to better provide that quality of life for our citizens, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here to present to council today.
Thank you, Chief.
Question?
Sergeant Hunt?
Just one
go
quick
ahead.
question. Quick question. Regards to the process or the flow chart that we're talking about for this particular program, I'm really interested in that one little element that wasn't really included, and those are the recommendations from the police department, and then how those recommendations affect this report. Will you be giving us recommendations, or will you be making recommendations in regards to this report to this council, or
yes, I will.
Within the
I will be glad on any occasion that the council has any type of question concerning what's ongoing in the community and what we're actually doing, because that's the whole purpose behind CompStats.
Yeah.
I tell the guys, when CompStat comes out, guess what? We no longer have at our disposal an excuse to say that we don't know. Yeah. This has to do with responsibility, accountability, and performance measures. We've got to be constantly vigilant about the crime trends and things that are ongoing in this community and be ever ready to change. Tampa, Florida, did what they call Focus on 4, which is a CompStat type program. They reduced crime in Tampa, Florida 46% in 5 years because they very astutely got out there and looked at the management of their agency and what was ongoing as far as the crimes and committing resources and responsibility and accountability in those measures to get it done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Sergeant Hollenbeck. Jennifer, thank you all. Just a matter of note, at 11:30,
yes,
we have a press conference at the training center, which to most of us is the old chamber building. Anybody here wants to go to that, be fine for council. If you all want a little bit longer presentation, a little bit more in detail, so I'll make you all aware of that. Thank you, Chief. Carol. Council, we have some special guests with us this morning, and I'm going to recognize them and ask them to stand up. At Boy Scout Troop 6 from St. Mary's, we have Deja Oceana, Senior Patrol Leader, Tom and Sandy Jones, the Scoutmasters. You guys stand up. Thank you for being here this morning. If there's no objection, Council, I would like to move item 3 under second readings up to our next slots in order for us to get our emergency management director down to Henderson for a meeting, which they're going to be talking about reimbursement to municipalities and counties for flood damage, and we want to make sure he does not miss that meeting. So if there's no objection to council, let's do that. We're looking at item 3 under second readings being in this slot. Consideration of an ordinance to adopt the Jackson-Madison County Emergency Management Plan, and we're on second reading of that ordinance. Council approved that. Any questions of Mr. Clement while he's here?
I haven't read it, so I don't know what it says. Kind of hard for me to consider it. Is there a particular digital copy of this particular plan?
Yes, sir.
Can you give me a digital? Thank you very much.
Any other members of the council want to address? We have, what, two? Okay, thank you. Yep. One more, Martin?
So you said you just had two, so.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
move the approval.
Move approval.
Second.
On second reading. Any discussion? If not, council, please vote.
The vote passes with 7 members in favor and 1 abstaining.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you. Okay, going back to our, under first readings, item 7. Our first item is consideration of a proposed daytime juvenile curfew ordinance. Council has any questions about that? We have Captain Corley here, the police department, and Ms. Luna with the city attorney's office.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Excuse me. As you may be aware, several months ago, a group was tasked as a committee to look into several different issues, specifically dealing with truancy and youth crime in the city of Jackson. We've been meeting for several months along those lines. During that time, a lot of data, similar to the data that you've just been presented, has come to the attention of the committee, and we've had to focus on that data and come up with some recommendations to address those issues. You were provided a packet of information. Some of that, one part of that was a letter from the committee. And just, I'm not going to go through all that, but as a background, I think we need to talk about some of the issues or the data that was presented. Namely, first of all, we're going to talk about truancy. There is a state compulsory attendance law in the state of Tennessee, and that's what determines if a child is truant from school. In the Jackson-Madison County school system for the 2008 and 2009 school year, there were 5,353 students who were declared truant. That means they had 5 or more unexcused absences. That's 41.4%. The truancy report also provided by the school system for February 2010 for this past school year up until that point showed there were 564 students in excess of 20 or more unexcused absences. There's obviously an issue with our students in attending school and graduating. The committee also reviewed crime data as it applies to youth, those being ages 13 to 17. In 2007 and 2008, 17% of the overall crime was committed by juveniles 13 to 17. And in 2009, it was 19%. I bring back to your attention that we have a 15-year-old currently in custody who was suspended at the time from school for the felony murder of Mr. Troy Mitchell. That occurred during school hours. There are several other felony offenses, burglaries, thefts of motor vehicles and property that have occurred in the past several years that have committed by juveniles ages 13 to 16 or 17 years of age. The data shows that the percentage of youth offenses overall have increased from 29% in 2007 for Part 1 crimes, which are felony offenses, to 35% in 2009. From 2007 to 2009, that was that increase. There's also been an increase of 33% to 40% for Part 2 crimes, which are misdemeanor offenses in general. Taking all that information together, the committee has proposed the current ordinance the ordinance that's in front of you today. I'd like to add one more set of data that was just compiled for this year. for 2010 from January until the end of the school year, where the only accepted week of non-compulsory attendance was each school's spring break. There was, in 2010, 202 juvenile arrests during the hours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. That's 62.5% of all juvenile arrests in 2010 alone have occurred during school hours. The ordinance, as it is proposed, you have in front of you, is divided in some sections. That first major section is definitions. I'm not going to go deeply into those at all. The main focus of the ordinance is section 103, which is entitled restrictions. This ordinance would be an extension of the state compulsory attendance law. And that it basically reads that a minor that hasn't reached his 18th birthday and is subject to that state compulsory attendance law does commit offense if he or she remains in public place or on the premises of any establishment within city limits during the curfew hours, which will be established between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., I believe. It also addresses those students, such as the one that's in custody for Mr. Mitchell's death, who have been suspended or expelled from school. They also will be encompassed in this ordinance that they are also be committing offense if they are in a public place on the premise of any establishment during those hours. It also adds that it would be unlawful for a parent or minor to knowingly permit or by insufficient control allow their minor that they're in custody or control of to remain in a public place under circumstances not constituting an exception to the curfew chapter. Now, there are a list of several exceptions to the curfew ordinance, a lot of which are derived from the state compulsory attendance law, including those that are in homeschool or accompanied by a parent or on a function of the school or in a work-study program or several other different types of restrictions, and if there are exceptions, and if there are any of those of question, we can address those.
Can I address it now?
Sure, by all means.
We were talking about earlier, item number 10 under exceptions. And in that particular language, we are bringing up the name of particularly Highway 45. This is something that was, as I understand it, was recommended by committee, but not necessarily in state law. Is that correct?
Well, yes, sir, that's correct. It was recommended by the committee.
So if we excluded that particular sentence, particularly Highway 45, it would have no real effect on the rest of the proposal.
I'm going to defer to Ms. Luna as she drafted the language.
The ordinances across the nation that seem to pass constitutional muster, Mr. Neudecker, seem to have protection for the right to travel, particularly the right to interstate travel. And we found this in an overwhelming number of ordinances that are being upheld. At first, the drafting just had Interstate 40. What it means is it alerts the police officers who are enforcing this ordinance that there will be people probably traveling through from other states who will be traveling on Interstate 40 who will be juveniles. The committee put in 45 as well because we saw some ordinances that listed the main arteries. And in Jackson, the committee felt like that I-40 and 45 were the main arteries as a suggestion as to where most of those people will be traveling through. Probably omitting number 10. I think it would be our advice not to omit number 10. If you left number 10 and just left Interstate 40, that would probably be okay. It's probably a minor issue. But what they were trying to reference were the main arteries, and that's what the other ordinances across the nation are referencing.
I guess question would be then, where it says particularly Highway 45, why not just say Highway 45 and other major intersections?
Again, we adopted the language that was,
Okay.
was upheld under constitutional muster, and I don't know that that word makes particular difference, but
Okay.
but we were just using the wording that was in the other ordinances.
Oh, thank you.
I had a question along those lines, Ms. Luna. So in the other ordinances that you're referencing, they did list specific interstates?
That's correct.
Okay.
Let me go back to that question, and Councilman Brooks is correct in asking this, but not everybody has an Interstate 40 running through it or an interstate at all. How do they particularly handle that language?
I think probably what they would look for are the main arteries, the highways that serve as main
So they're just listing
arteries,
those?
where people would be traveling through your hometown
Mhm.
just as passersby.
I guess the question that I'm leading to, I have no real concern about that particular language, except for the fact that it lists one particular highway and not 70 or 20 or other, because we are, as I explained earlier, we are the hub city of West Tennessee. We're going to have a lot of roads intersecting into this town, and why they were not listed as well.
You could substitute particularly for as well as, or as an example
Okay.
of, you know, or something to that nature.
Would you recommend that, something like that, as far as language?
Well, you would be veering away from what we know has passed constitutional muster in other ordinances, but I particularly don't think it makes that much difference.
Either adding to or taking away. I mean, I don't know what you mean by constitutional muster when it comes to that. That's my question.
Particularly
Yeah.
Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
We and many other cities have patterned our ordinance after Dallas, Texas's ordinance, and it has withstood the test in federal court. And for that reason, there are an abundant number of ordinances very much like ours
Okay.
that have adopted that wording.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Captain Crowley, going back to the truancy
Yes, sir.
segment of it. Currently, the school system only has one truancy officer.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Are there plans to add more?
Yes, sir, and I believe Dr. Zampito's here if there, and also Dr. Lake, but there is funding that is being used to add an additional 1.5. So they will have additional resources to handle truancy enforcement from the school system standpoint.
Now, the truancy segment, that officers is that one truancy officer, is it covering the whole system or just a specific school?
It will be covering the whole system beginning in
No, the
new
one
school.
that you have now.
My understanding, the current system is that there's one truancy teacher, truancy officer that's at one school only, under state mandate, I believe.
Could you repeat that, please?
I believe, my understanding, and I'm not sure if.
You kind of qualified it a couple different times.
Yes, there's one current employee of the school system that focuses on truancy.
Okay.
At this time.
I think that school was Jackson Central Marion, and that was because of corrective action that the state placed upon Jackson Central Marion that they had to establish that truancy officer.
We're looking at the figures with respect to truancy. I found that it's unbelievable for just one school. And then there's other schools who have higher numbers of truancy. That's just not acceptable. And maybe and hopefully in the future we have more truancy officers. Also, with respect to your language in your ordinance, let me in your juvenile curfew, let me say to you all as a group that you've done a fine job.
Thank you.
This one needs enforcement. I support it. The last one kind of infringed on the rights of teenagers who weren't doing anything wrong. But your language is excellent, and I support it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions? Councilman Wallace is recognized.
At the review meeting, we discussed the students that get out of school early to go to work.
Yes, sir.
And you said it was in here. I see it about work-study program.
Yes, sir.
But I'm talking about just a regular job, not a work-study program where they don't get credit for, where they just get out of school early to work.
My understanding is the program, they're still under a state compulsory attendance law. If they have completed their hours and they're allowed to leave, then that's still going to be part of that program. It may not be a school functions work study, but if they've completed their hours, then they're not compelled to be there. And if they're, the same thing that applies to the dual enrollment, there's many students that are enrolled in high schools and also enrolled into a local college. That's still part of the school program. So as long as that's verifiable, if an officer runs across that particular student in public, the first duty we have as law enforcement is to investigate, are they subject to this or not? And that's by contacting the school system. And if they're allowed to leave the premises to attend work or to attend another school, then that's certainly an exception.
Will there be notes or cards or something the student will get if they're, get out of school at noon to work, and so they can show the officer that, or?
That may be something that the school system prepares, but as the ordinance reads, as far as the enforcement of it, and there's going to be training on all this. The law enforcement is going to be trained on the ordinance and the state compulsory attendance law, as well as the school system, the home schools, the private schools. There will be training provided, so we'll all be on the same page.
One question. I'd asked this of you earlier in regards to, this is certainly within the city limits of the city of Jackson, and this is to allow the police department to involve itself into the educational system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, is anyone planning to present this same recommendation with whatever modifications are required to the county? And if you are not, why not? And this goes to the committee, I guess. This is a question to the committee, not necessarily to you.
Dr. Lake, do you want to
Dr. Lake
address that? Or is the chairman the person of the committee?
Sure, we can, the committee's gonna meet as soon as we find out what your pleasure is on the ordinance, and we can certainly take that up.
As of now, you had no plans, though?
No, we were taking one step at a time.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I may. You referenced the state law. Is the only difference now in that only a truancy officer can stop a student right now?
Under the state compulsory attendance law, law enforcement can become involved in enforcing that, but only after certain agreements and different things are in place, which are not in place at this time. Mm-hmm. Even so, the state compulsory attendance law does not deem the child truant until they have 5 or more unexcused absences.
Okay.
There are certainly too many opportunities and things that are going on within that window that are not being addressed. There's too many children falling through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Brooks, if I may add to that, practically speaking, what is going to be happening in Jackson if this ordinance passes is that the police department is going to be assisting the school system in enforcing truancy. When you begin to have the police officers enforcing truancy, it becomes a problem if you don't have an ordinance such as this that's in effect, because those police officers have a difficult time finding a reason to stop juveniles that they see who are out during school hours. And so this ordinance it offers the police officers a reason to contact these or to stop these students. It also offers the officers a procedure to go by when they do, to make sure that the students' rights are protected and to make sure that they see, who is supposed to be in school and who is not. So there's going to be an ordinance, and there's also going to be the police officers, the police department helping the school system in the enforcement of truancy.
Because presently a police officer could only stop a student based on probable cause if they were committing a crime.
Correct.
At least reasonable suspicion that they are, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
I'd like to make a motion to accept.
Second.
Before we have the motion, let's, this is first reading, we need to open floor for any comments. Anyone present who would like to comment on the ordinance, be in support of or opposition to, if you would indicate that at this time. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and there's been a motion and a second for adoption. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, question on the motion.
Yes.
With respect to the curfew hours, 8:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. School not out at 2:15.
Excuse me?
School out at 2:15 to 3 o'clock. I mean, how
I
you
think
derive
different
at the
schools
2
are out at
p.m.?
different times as the current structure is right now. I think that was probably decided upon as a much more simple time period instead of going by quarter hour. There are schools that go through till 3. There are also schools that begin at 7 or 7:15, I believe.
Do you have a problem with 3 o'clock?
Well, since the high schools dismiss at 2:15, you're going to have a lot of juveniles who are going to be on the road and out at 2:20 or 2:17 maybe. So the committee chose 2 o'clock as, practically speaking, again, when an officer stops a juvenile at 2:10, if you look at the options, there's not a lot that he can do by the time that he goes through the procedure of contacting the school system to find out where that juvenile is supposed to be.
Okay, Captain, you mentioned 2:30 a few minutes ago, so
I may
we're
have
saying 2
misread.
o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock. And again, just as she related, there's also students that are going to be traveling between 7 and 8
Right.
trying to attend schools that don't start till
Yeah.
after 8. So
Okay. So
Okay,
you're
any
satisfied
other-
with the time frame?
I believe it's the most appropriate.
Okay.
I have a real quick question, if I may. Is Gateway considered a private school or a homeschool?
I believe it's a homeschool organization.
One distinction, there are registered homeschool students in Jackson, Madison County, and there are homeschool students who are not registered.
Mm-hmm.
And the state compulsory attendance law covers those students, protects those students who are registered homeschoolers. So if Gateway is a registered homeschooler program, then
Is
they...
it? That's my question. Is it? Do we know?
I'm not
Anyone from the
aware
school
whether it
system?
is or it isn't.
Probably Dr. Zambito could best answer that for you.
One more question, just a matter of
Okay,
point.
let's finish this question that we're on.
We're talking about the enforcement of this.
Councilman, we were dealing with a question as far as Gateway
I'm sorry.
Is there
being a
anyone-
registered,
Yeah, I would just.
the children registered.
No.
Dr. Zambito, let's
She
try
is.
to handle. Dr. Zambito, do you know, would you mind coming up, and you may not know.
I'm gonna let Ms. Battle do that too.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
She spoke about the Gateway, whether or not it was a registered program. The difference with Gateway and being in our school system is those students are not required to go to school Monday through Friday from 8 until 2. So yes, I believe Gateway is a number 3. In our attendance office, they will have the different schools that are offered throughout the state of Tennessee, and it'll have a rating, which will call it to reference to the law that she's speaking to. But there would be some homeschool children who could, not homeschool, some Gateway children who could possibly be out on the street during the 8 to 2 hours, but it would be acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a simple question.
Yes, Councilman.
When we talk about the enforcement of or the violations themselves, and I'm assuming it's going to go through Madison County Juvenile Court, will they be the ones issuing the fine?
That'd be correct. There will be, after this is complete, there will be an agreement, memorandum of understanding signed between city court and juvenile court. That's already has been drafted and is prepared, and that will be where they go. They'll go to juvenile court, as well as the adults, the parents that would be cited if they are knowingly in violation.
So this will not go through city court at all?
No, sir.
Okay, so it goes directly to juvenile court, and that $50 fine, how will that be enforced?
how the $50 fine be enforced.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be, that'd be
With
fine
great-
through the court.
With great hope.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
That'll be the court's decision on
That's
how
correct.
they enforce the
Yeah.
$50.
Okay.
Council will be eliminated from that process. Any other questions from council as far as discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I have an amendment, if it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the amendment has to do with the recommendation to the county commission, whether, it doesn't matter whether they pass or not pass, but I'd like the committees, the work committee, to approach the county commission to put together a program similar to this one. I assume that would be, the wording would be slightly different. Again, it doesn't really matter whether or not the commission passes this or not, but I'd like to make sure that they have that opportunity.
I'm not
That
sure
way.
the disposition of the county is the business of the Jackson City Council.
No,
I think.
I'm just asking if the committee will.
Yeah, I think that has been obligated by the committee to go ahead and present that to the county through Dr. Zambito and her staff. Do we have that commitment, Doctor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any additional discussion? Okay, not council, please vote.
The vote is unanimous.
Thank you all. Thank you,
Thank
Kathy.
you.
Grace. Item number 2 under first reading is consideration of the ordinance to close an abandoned unnamed alley running east off of Hayes Street between Taylor Street and East Dedrick Street, submitted by the City Housing Department.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning, Stan.
Let me give this unit a minute or so to crank up. See if it'll find the signal. While it's looking, I'll continue. This is again a continuation of our process to eliminate those public alleys that exist throughout the city that were never improved, that are basically running through people's yards and at the end of their driveways and in various situations. And this is an example of that. We have an alley that is extends from the end of a driveway. Basically, the driveway is in the alley, and then once you get past the alley, it just goes out into the grass and begins to just go through the backs of yards. So we are recommending that this alley be abandoned, and I would show you pictures, and hopefully we will try to get that.
It's up on the screen here, Stan.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can see it. I just can't see it. All right. Let me show you then. This is the alley as it leaves Hazette Street going east. This is a view from the back side of that alley as it passes that accessory building and goes back through the back of the yards. And again, this is a photograph of the alley. And basically this alley that you saw in red runs through this direction here. And it just runs through the backs of those yards. So we are recommending that it be abandoned.
Okay, any questions from council on that particular ordinance? If not, this is first reading, and we'll have open a public hearing to hear comments from anyone to speak in support of or in opposition to this particular ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion?
Move to adoption.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And the motion passes with 7 members in favor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Stan. Item 8, under second readings, First item is consideration of an ordinance for the 2010-2011 fiscal year operating and capital budget.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Morning.
Suffering from laryngitis, so I'll let Karen handle difficult questions. You have before you, and not to be confusing, we did have a interim revised ordinance that we presented at the pre-agenda meeting. Fortunately, we don't see this in front of us here, but you can see it on the flat screens above. And basically, to get from point A to point B to point C, I'd like to take you through the worksheets that Karen presented. Last Tuesday at our pre-agenda meeting, we went through the changes that were relative at that time, most of which had been brought up by Councilman Wallace. And we looked at the net of all of that was only a $4,802.53 increase to the unanticipated expense. See, we got things flashing all over here, but basically that was the result of the overstatement of some items in community services and the understatement of employee benefits in the planning area. And then we also had an additional copier expense. So the net of all of that was only $4,802.53 in what we would call the balance item, and that's being the balanced account, the unanticipated expense. Since then, after reviewing some 30 questions that Councilman Wallace, who is our treasurer, had brought up late in the game, but still very relevant, we have uncovered some more issues, and I'll address a couple of those because I should have caught those myself. But since the 131 Health and Sanitation, or Solid Waste Fund, that is, as it is sometimes known, is a separate fund, we had not planned, I had not planned for the 1.5% cost of living in that account, in that fund. So we had to add that, and it amounted to about $9,000 there. And the same holds true for the Sportsplex, which is an enterprise fund. So those two funds had to be brought up to equality with the COLA that was planned for all the other city employees. And then I'm gonna let Ms. Bell kind of go through the rest of the changes that we did not discuss the other night.
Okay, in addition to that, there were some questions about some of the revenues budgeted at Oman Arena and the Civic Center. So we got with Mose Burton, and he did make some adjustments to some revenue line items that you see stated in the second grouping of accounts. Total there changes $94,427.64 between the two facilities as far as adjustments to revenue there. In addition, we had to go back and do some adjustments to some employee benefits that had been understated in a couple of accounts, and you see those adjustments there at the top. One of those was, unfortunately, City Council had been calculated to be full-time for the purpose of FICA, and you know that you were part-time, so there were some adjustments to be made there with some retirement benefits on TCRS and FICA. The ultimate adjustment to the balancing account, as Mr. LaFunis referred to the unanticipated expenses, is a decrease in $78,621.90, which will leave us a balance in that account for the beginning of the new budget year of $184,234.53.
And when we refer to that as the balance account, that means basically the difference between our operating expense and operating revenues. The revenues exceeded the expense by $184,000. So then this becomes the balancing account or the plug account. So we still have some monies there, rainy day monies, whatever you'd want to refer to them as. Not quite as much as we started out with.
You may remember last year when we brought some budget amendments after the fiscal year started, this would be the account that we would draw on, where in years past we've had to do a draw on fund balance. So this allows us a little ability to have the extra there should something come up after the budget year begins, as many times it does.
If we open the floor to questions, Councilman Newdecker did hit us with some questions rather late on Memorial Day.
Sorry.
That's all right. And again, I'm going to ask Ms. Bell here to address the ones that we have answers for, the ones that we may not have that require additional review. Our suggestion to the council would be that we go ahead and pass the budget on the second reading and then come back, and any of these that require an amendment we can subsequently handle.
Okay. We didn't get this till 9:32 last night, so I didn't get it till I got to the office this morning, but I'll address as many as I can. First question that you asked was, what is line item 41206 Driver's Assistance Program? This was a program that was started by City Court last year as a service to those individuals who were unable to obtain their driver's license. They kept being repeat offenders in City Court for revoked license. And so this was a service that was started by City Court to be able to educate over a 6-week period those individuals to be able to go back and get their license. It is a very low cost to the city. The budget last year was $22,000. This year it's down to about $18,000. But it is a service that was greatly needed to educate and retrain some individuals so that they were not repeat offenders in City Court. The next item you had, you said, why would they have a $200 office supply budget and spent nothing? Again, I would have to check with City Court on that. That's, like I said, it's a low-cost budget. Most of that is supplies and copy materials that they use in the program. 41430 Code Zoning Appeals, wanting to know about annual training. There is no training for that board. Again, Stan Pilot might could address that a little bit more.
Let me ask Stan now, because there is something in state law that requires them to be trained?
They do have training. The training comes out of our planning training budget.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Some of the questions that you ask about some of these as far as personnel in different departments and what they plan to spend on travel and training, I'd have to follow up with those department heads. All we have is the budgets they present, and I would have to follow back up with those.
One question that was particularly important, the legal fees for environmental
Legal
court.
fees for environmental court. Last year, you remember there is a line item that's called legal fees, and what we've tried to do is to break that out. You notice now you have one for annexation, one for ADA cost. There were some legal fees that were being incurred with environmental court, so we felt that in order to get a better idea of what revenues were being brought in and what environmental court was truly costing us, we should break those fees out. So that's what you see in the 2011 budget. Thank you. You ask about the COLA. Right now, the current budget COLA is 1.5% is what is in that line item.
All right. Thank you.
As far as your questions regarding the insurance decreases, I would have to follow up with our risk manager on that, but I can follow up and get information on that. As far as the monies that are in 41,900, 765, and 767, those lists were sent out in response to Councilman Wallace's questions last week. I believe there were attached lists from Mr. LaFoon, but we can get those back out as far as the distribution and appropriation to agencies and other governmental entities that we do fund, but he has those lists.
There's another question that I had in regards to personal liability for the city. It's been one of those increasing items, and yet this year it looked like it was going down. Is that another one of those budget items that we're going to have to look at?
It's another budget item. Again, I need to follow up with our risk manager. Most of those that were budgeted in general government, we did follow up with them to see if there would be reason that we could decrease, so we would have gotten the data from her for that.
And on those charts that I sent Randy, I may have assumed you were going to redistribute them, so it's possible that the rest of the council didn't get those, the ones that you asked for on grants and donations and other agencies and et cetera, but I will send those to the rest of the council.
One of your questions was, how do we generate expenses in a tax sale? Anytime properties go to a tax sale, there are fees that are incurred by the city. Number one, we have to purchase the property, pay the delinquent taxes.
That come out of that? That comes out of that?
That does come out of that. Yes, that does come out of that.
Plus there is postage. We had a default judgment last Friday, and there was over 300 properties on there. Well, there are summonses that have to be served, and
that's
so,
what I was.
right.
I wasn't sure those items were not listed out. Purchasing, that was an interesting part. So those become part of our assets. Yeah.
The ones that no one else
Then no one else buys, okay.
Yeah, if they are not redeemed, they go on the city asset of infrastructures, which is found in your audit report. And the last one, I'll have to follow up again, 42-151, and get some more information on that.
Thank you.
So basically, if there are no further questions, we are back to the revised ordinance. I guess this would be copy C, which is a budget of, a balanced budget of $63,513,950.77 in revenue and expense. That's what's on the table for your approval or further questioning.
Okay, Al, if you, on your list of amendments that the council has, time you plug all those numbers in, does it match the number on your?
Yes.
Okay,
right.
All right. If council has no objection, since we do have the amendments that are different from our first reading, if there are no objections, I'd like to take that full page and just classify them as revision number 1 and include all of them. We'll need an ordinance. We'll need a motion to approve the ordinance, and second, then come back and approve the amendments, then the ordinance as revised. Is that clear as mud to everybody?
Mud is, yeah.
A little muddy, but anyway.
Okay. Okay, you all have a sheet with all the changes made by staff after going back through the budget after our first reading.
And this is all inclusive, right?
It's all inclusive.
Okay, so I need to make a motion that we approve this amendment.
Well, we need a motion on the table to approve the ordinance, and second, then come back and approve the amendments.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
give me a point of clarification with regards to the COLA. The 1.5 as it is now percentage would take effect July 1, and I heard something about January 1, another 1.5 if and when. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman. Yeah,
Okay.
We're going to reassess our financial condition at the end of midway through our budget, and if we're in a position to give another 1.5%, that is proposed at this time, and will go in effect 1 January, which will be a total increase in salaries of roughly 2.4%, which is the CPI for the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me get,
Okay.
so let me,
Any other questions from Al and Karen before we take a motion for adoption? Or
clarify,
Mhm.
please, clarify one more time.
Okay. We have the 1 page of amendments which were put together after our first reading.
Right.
So this will have to come in the form of 1 amendment. If there's no objection, we could take each of these as an amendment, but you all have a copy of them. If we can just take this as an amendment to the budget. But before we hear the amendment, we need to get a motion on the table to approve the ordinance, budget ordinance, properly second, then come back and approve the amendment.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the ordinance, budget ordinance, properly second. And now then, we'll address the amendment to that budget ordinance. Is there a motion?
Need to vote first.
Vote first on the acceptance
On my
of the
motion,
original.
we need to approve.
Council, please vote.
And that motion passes with 7 members in favor.
Okay, now we come back to the amendment number 1, which you all have copies of, and I'll ask if there is a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Any discussion on the amendment? Council, please vote.
That motion passes with 7 members in favor.
Okay, we need one more motion, gentlemen. That is to approve the budget ordinance as amended. Is there a motion? We have, and second.
Second.
We have properly second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
And that motion passes with 6 members in favor and 1 abstaining.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Item 2, under second reading, is consideration of ordinance to set the property tax rate.
And as I've explained before, this is not an increase or decrease. This is a static tax rate
We're at $2.10 now, but there was a reappraisal of all city properties in 2010, the previous one having been 2005. And let me show you what the state then does. Now, this doesn't guarantee that your tax might not go up $5 and your neighbors might not go down $5, because we're working with numbers here of $1,213,058,040 as far as the assessed value. Now, the appraised value would be multiple times that. Then they come along and add, that's real property, add personal property, and come up with $1,378,000. Come down and add utilities and things, public utilities, other, come down to a total of $1,392,000,000. They divide that by the prior year's tax levy to come up with $1.96. So if everything were equal, which it isn't, then that means no one person's tax, either residential or commercial, would change by a penny. That won't happen. But overall, this is a no tax rate increase or decrease. This is just what the state does, but you're talking, you know, $1 billion. So it's a generic calculation. But it is not a tax increase nor a tax decrease.
Okay, is there a motion for adoption of the ordinance?
Second.
Tax rate, that's properly made and second. In discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the motion passes 7 members in favor.
Okay, item 3, we've already taken care of under.
Mayor, if I may,
What is, yes.
just like to thank Frank and Karen for, Al and Karen for the good job they did on the budget and answering all the last minute questions. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, thank
You
you.
did an excellent job. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Pressure on Memorial Day.
you. Okay, we already handled item number 3. We'll go to item number 4, consideration of ordinance to rezone property located at the southeast corner of North Parkway and Rosenblum Drive from RG2 General Residential District to OC Office Center District, containing 4.6 acres, more or less, submitted by West Tennessee Regional Blood Center, Inc. and Martha Loretta Jones.
And you did approve that on first reading, so.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
Motion passes 7 members in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Item number 9, new business, consideration of resolutions for the City of Jackson to contribute $50,000 to the Disaster Recovery Services Organization for use in rehabilitating flood-damaged homes of citizens of the City of Jackson who had no flood insurance. We have Mr. Cook here, I think, serves on the committee, and Pat Ross. Thank you all for being here. You may give the council just a brief overview, Mr. Cook or Pat, as far as the services of DRS.
Okay. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak today. 30 days ago, as we know, we received a significant amount of rainfall, and it kept raining and kept raining and kept raining. As a result of it, there were a number of homes that were negatively affected by the floodwaters. About 95% of the homes that were affected did not have flood insurance, as you can well imagine. As a result, we have reactivated our committee, Disaster Recovery Services. If some of you who may remember back in 2003, is a group of leaders from the community that represent government agencies, nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity, the YMCA, the Red Cross, RIFA, West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation, United Way, Area Relief Ministries, and we are a totally volunteer committee. We have approached the Mennonites and the Christian Reform World Relief Crews to come in and provide volunteer labor to rehabilitate the homes that were damaged. We seek funding, and we're in a private fundraising program to raise money, the last dollars in after FEMA dollars, based on a homeowner's ability to pay, to provide on a voucher system, money to rehabilitate the houses.
Any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Udecker.
Citizens must first register with FEMA. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, sir. Disaster Recovery Service is, as we say, we're an ad hoc committee. That is the protocol. Any disaster, this is regulated by the federal government. You must get your emergency service from the American Red Cross. Secondly, after FEMA comes in, FEMA must assess you. So there's no assistance until after FEMA. But every citizen must register if they feel they had any kind of damage when it is declared a national disaster.
DRS is a local entity. You know, as you said, it's a variety of local. And as a local entity, why would you be? I'm not sure how this reacts with FEMA. I'm sorry. I still don't understand why that would, you know, even though you're telling me that you're required by law. For some reason, it doesn't follow why you would be required by law.
If I may, back in 1999 when we had the first tornado, we found through the federal government that every community you should have a long-term recovery service, because there is an unmet need against any person who's been through a disaster. First of all, you don't know where or what to do. In 1999, the nonprofit community came together when people were requesting assistance on how to get my house back. I don't have the ability or understanding of how to go about getting my insurance or helping rebuild my home. So the Disaster Recovery Group was formed by a multitude of nonprofit government agencies to come together to help meet that unmet need in the community. And just a few numbers, in '99 when this group came together, we had over 100 cases of people that didn't have enough adequate insurance or means to put their lives back together. In '03, we assisted over 500 families from putting roofs on, putting windows back on, putting back up part of the house that was destroyed, and helped to rebuild 23 homes. And then this year, again, with the flood that we're faced with, it's a much different character that we're dealing with, and a lot of people don't know where to go. And basically, it's offering assistance. It is to keep that extra expense after our existing nonprofits. From just putting a roof on. And most people don't have flood insurance, and they're not going to get back in their homes unless they have some kind of assistance.
This conglomerate of charitable organizations that you've fallen under the DRS name, I believe part of the resolution is that the city give this money either to, if I'm quite correct, the United Way or West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation. Is that correct? Is there some reason why we cannot give that money directly to the DSR?
We are an ad hoc committee. We fall under the guidelines of United Way of West Tennessee and West Tennessee Healthcare, because those two are nonprofit organizations. So when people give to money, they will get their receipts on giving to a nonprofit. It is a protocol that we use in order to keep a trail of what's going on. United Way of West Tennessee will receive the donations. They will write receipts. In turn, the Disaster Recovery Group will review cases, write a voucher system, and United Way and West Tennessee Healthcare will pay these vouchers. We do not pay clients. We will make contracts with different organizations, like the different building materials, and we will pay them. We do not pay clients directly in any way.
Do you take, I guess, how do you access the funds out of that particular organization, either West Tennessee Healthcare Foundation or the United Way?
Because those were the two.
No, I'm sorry, how do you access, how do you get those funds?
How do we get those funds?
Yeah.
It is through a voucher system. The disaster recovery group, as I say, is made up of strictly volunteers. We have caseworkers. I am presently, and have been since '99, the secretary that write the vouchers. When they come to the board, when they come to the table, a case is presented. Once that case is presented, and the board looks at it, they discuss it, they determine what is needed. If it needs $5,000 in building materials, and we've made contact with Lowe's to buy building material at a discount, that material is purchased, a voucher is wrote, it is approved and signed off by the chairman of the disaster recovery group, has 2 signatures. It then goes and presented to United Way or to West Tennessee Healthcare, and the check is wrote directly to Lowe's.
Remind the council that the allocation in the resolution would be strictly for our city residents affected by the flood. We think we have certainly the need for that amount of money, and also the DRS is not a tax-exempt organization. That's why we're having to use either United Way or West Tennessee Healthcare to get that IRS classification to the people who want to contribute. You all have been activated in how many disasters?
Since '99. '99 was our first one.
We were able to, for the council's education, if you hadn't been around back in '03 or in '99, we leveraged approximately $750,000 after the 2003 tornado to about $4 to $5 million in services as a result of the volunteers and the work that we did. All we're doing is reduplicating the process that we used in '03 and in 1999.
Okay.
And we do have, since the '99, the committee has put together a manual, a step-by-step. It is available to you by email or disc. It is to show, and we have been asked by several communities, especially in Tennessee, in dealing with the Mennonites and CRWs. They have gone across the country and they have presented the way we operate as a disaster recovery service. And even this time we have had tremendous response from FEMA and the federal government stating that we have a plan and they recommend us to other communities. And this is how you have a long-term disaster recovery service.
We had actually the 2 groups, the churches, that the Mennonites and the Christian Reform World Relief Crews, that actually called us when they heard about Tennessee's problem, and these are national organizations, and asked if we needed help specifically bypassing Nashville as a result of the work we did at the 2003 and how organized we were.
Very good.
I'll make a motion to accept that. Well, I think it's a great thing. Y'all continue to do what you're doing. I hope the city could do more in the future, but I think it's something that's well needed in the community.
Okay, we have a motion for approval of the resolution, properly second. Any additional discussion? Council, please vote. Thank you. Thank you guys for what you do. Appreciate your hard work. Item number 2 under new business is consideration of the appointment of 9 charter review committee members. Council has a list of those members and the districts that they have agreed to represent. That is submitted for your consideration.
Motion to approve.
A motion
Second.
for approval. Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Motion passes with 7 members in favor.
For council information, we'll be meeting with that committee. I think the mayor and the city attorney has been, as part of the ex officio members of that committee, be meeting sometime in July for a first meeting. And we'll let you know when that is in case you want to attend. Board appointments, tree board reappointment of Eddie Jenkins.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion. Council, please vote.
Motion passes with 7 members in favor.
Okay, item number 4 is consideration of budget amendments.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion for approval.
Second.
A second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
Wait a minute.
Thank you, Harvey.
And the motion passes with 6 members in favor, 1 abstain.
Thank you. And the final item is consideration of invoices over $10,000.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Oh, if you could, Mayor. I'd like to thank everybody for the support and the council for all the calls and the support that you gave me when I was going through Morrendale, and just continue to pray, and I'm moving forward. I'm glad to be back with the council.
Good to have you back, Council. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a second. Any discussion? Council, please vote.
Motion passes 6-1.
Before you adjourn, I'd like to officially thank Judge Blake Anderson for the work that his staff and crew and group has done on the homes throughout the city of Jackson. They provided a much needed manpower. So thank you very much, Blake.
Okay, there being no further business, meeting is adjourned.